Hello and welcome back to the show. Just quickly check this again. Should still be working. And welcome back to my show for Fuse. This week, as last week, we're working on the dice roll comparator. Before I get started, I'll look at a quick overview of what we did last week and give a short introduction for myself. Let's do the overview first so we get right into it, what we had last week. What we're working on is a dice comparison, and that's this one right here. And as you can see, this is very simple. It's kind of fixed. What we have is we have a couple of dice. Very fancy dice. I know they don't have any graphics for them yet. They're simply like this. We have a standard D6, and we have a Dark Souls black dice. And this is from the game Dark Souls, the board game where the black dice are the weakest dice. And the expected value over on the side, and that's 4.67. That means if you had these two dice, you'd expect to roll 4.67 every time. Obviously, Dark Souls is never so nice. Dark Souls, if you had just a black one, you'd get 1.17, which is a terrible roll. If you had a black one and an orange one, you get 3.67. Maybe it was a blue one, you get 3 instead. And there's a couple other options, like if we had lots of black dice. This is typically why I made this tool, because in the game you quite often have to compare, well, what's better, 3 black dice or a black and a blue dice? And the 3 black dice are better. But for example, are 2 blue dice better? And the answer is ever so slightly. The 2 blue dice will be better. And if you recall from last time, we had another little 0 here. I removed that for now, and I'll get back to that right away as to why. And so that's the wrap of what we had last time. This scrolls. We can't add new dice yet, and that's what's missing. And we can't add new dice, and we can't edit the modifier. But that's what we'll be doing today. And so again, my name is edA-qa. I work at Fuse. I do a lot of the layout and animation engines. And I'm working in our top product, the previewer. The previewer is nice because we can modify the code over here, and it makes an immediate effect. I just have to find it. So instead of a plus, we want an X. You would see it switch to an X, unless we have problems. Wonderful example, I know. Wait, I may have not pressed save. There we go. Okay. And there it's an X right there. The reason why I say not press saves is because I switch between a Linux and a Mac system, and occasionally Windows and a laptop. And Mac has their save control key in a very different place, and so I'm not always used to it. So let's put this back to a plus, and we'll save that. One thing I did do from last time is add some Font Awesome fonts to it. So instead of the plus, let's see if Font Awesome has a plus to it. And okay, I know there's a window open here. And I'll show you how I did that right away. And we're going to choose probably a bad icon, because we don't want just a normal plus. We really want something that we can actually see as a separate font. So let's go to the icons and let's say, what does plus have here? Is there a plus? Plus. Plus, plus, cart plus. That's a very normal plus. That's no fun. So let's do a plus square instead. Plus square looks up like something good, or do we want plus circle? Dice are typically square. So let's just keep with the theme plus square. And we want this code here, F0FE. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say and hash number X, F0FE. This is standard XML escape, so I'm not doing anything special to UX here. And I know somebody in the community did a Font Awesome at one type with a whole bunch of names, so you didn't have to, so you could actually say like FA plus square instead. But I'm just going to use the quick way to use these icons now. And we have to say font equals Font Awesome. This isn't something built in, obviously, to Fuse. It just, I'll show you in a second. So I save this, and let's look at it over here. And because we have a plus box around here now, we really don't need to have the background here have color. So we can actually say the color of this is color primary, and remove the color primary here. And if you notice, those names are from a material design scheme. And there we go. That looks more like what we want. We have a little plus here. We can afford to make it a little bit bigger. So instead of padding, we'll just add it and make, say, it's 25 in size, and get rid of the padding instead. It's a bit bigger. Okay, and that should be big enough to click. You have to worry about that. There's a... We're going to put a bit of a margin. We're still going to put padding on here, and it clicked outside. Padding equals... Let's just get it up to 32. This is the iOS standard for, this is what they recommend for clicking on mobile, or at least it was last I checked. Anything less than that, and the user has a hard time pressing this with their fingers. So 7 plus 25 is 32, and we're going to say the hit test mode equals local bounds. Normally what the hit test would be is the hit test would simply be this font down here, which is going to be a bit smaller. If we want the whole bounds, then we have that whole bounds. And this doesn't have to be a rectangle anymore, it can just be a panel. It's clicked, it still has the same alignment, and it's a panel. And you'll see over here, it gives it some more space. And what's important is you could actually click right beside the space and activate the plus button. And that's what we want, because when you have a finger, especially with mine, I have actually relatively fat fingers. I'll say I have fat fingers rather than saying somebody else does. And this gives the user a good place to click, clicking areas they can hit along the side and not worry about it. Okay, now where does this font awesome come from? What I did offline before last time is I created a resources file, resources UX. And this uses this UX resources flag. What this just tells our compiler is that when you see this file, this is an actual code in here. It's not like a UX class, it's something special, it's just a list of stuff. And our list of stuff are globals here. And these are all the colors here. And so these are all the primary or the material design colors. I generated these online and then modified them because I tend to find they end up too dark, most of the palette generators. And they need a light, it's very dark. Okay, and this is the basics. And I put these colors into the main set. We'll see them around. And this lets us keep using the same colors and not retype the value over and over and over. For future improvement of Fuse, what we'll probably have is a special color type. For now, we just use a float 4 because they're 4 floating point values. And this is where the font awesome comes from. It's a font. It's a global font awesome. That's where the name comes from. And it's just the OTF file that I have. This is the true type font file, or open type, however they call it now. And we can add more resources in there. And don't save because I didn't need to make any changes. And at the bottom here, we'll see another button I did. Just take this second here, highlight it for a second. This is the dice button. Inside, when I click on one of the dice, these are little buttons on the side. It just gave it a little bit of layout. Still not so pretty, but I just did that quickly this morning. And so we can move on now. And then you see it used down here, dice button 2 times, label, and the icon. This is just the font awesome icon. We're just saying this is the text. We have the close and the minus. Not really exhilarating, they're basic ones, but it works, and that's what we want. And that's about where we left off. Now, what we want to get into today is we want to be able to add the modifiers. You'll notice this code right up here. I commented it out. I can comment it back in briefly, or however we do that in this code. Oh, Sublime, how do I uncomment something? Comment. / Okay, that's how we do it. And now you see a big fat 0 over there. What we have is a 0 is because the default 0 and we had no way to edit it. This is coming from the state file. If you weren't with us last time, the state, each one of these rows is a dice set. And one of the things it has was a modifier. And so I'm going to make this modifier 1 per second, just hard code it so you can see. It'll reload and now you have a +1. And you notice how those results are a lot higher. And we'll put it back to 0. And what I wanted to do last time was I wanted a way to edit this. Okay. And so this recaps everything I did from last time. So I'm just going to shout out again that if you are watching and you have questions, please type it in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I like to show you how these things work. And I will, yeah, like I say, if you have questions, please ask. And I'm going to work on random things. I'm going to do a bit of coding and structure. I avoid doing too much design during the show. I do it offline because for me at least design is a lot of sort of you know, guessing, trying guessing, and seeing what happens. And it works well. I do a little bit, but I'm going to focus on the JavaScript and the basic layout for a while. And this gets me to the first problem I had while doing design this morning from the graphics, is formatting this little 0 here. Now, I can make this text input. We have these three things because we had plus and minus. I can make it a text input. But what I was really thinking is I saw another problem with this. When you click on this text here, you get this list of dice. And this list is going to get very long. Dark Souls only has the 3 dice. Well, it has a 4th one, but you only use it for defense rolls. But there's also for the normal D6, a D4, D6, D8, up to D20, if not more. But then there's other games you might want to add. Like the next one I'll probably add just for fun is Arcadia Quest, because I play that often. And what happens is this list starts getting longer and harder to choose from. And more importantly, this listing up here, I can't differentiate what type of dice these are. You notice the Dark Souls dice look exactly like the D6. We would actually like to have a way to specialize the way each one of these looks. I mean, we want something completely different to avoid this tiny little label, which you can barely read anyways. It says Dark Souls Black. And if you change it, it can be Dark Souls Blue. But you see the color changes. And what would be nice is that if you change in the D6, for example, if you put a D8, it would be 8 sides or something, 6 sides or 8 sides or something like that. But the way I've designed the UI now is we simply cannot do that. And so I want to restructure the state, first of all, to make this a bit more flexible and to move this modifier as to one of these types. Now we'll see what that means in a second. And what I want is, this is going to be generic now, the 0. It'll be like a dice. We'll split off 2 different dice types. And then for each dice type, they'll have their own custom editor. They'll each have close and remove, but they'll have their own little editor section. And this lets us customize the display a bit. And let's just worry about these 2 dice first. Let's remove the modifier again, and let's start worrying about those 2 dice type. We have to split them off. So now how do we do this? We have a die, and we have a dice set. And this die, recall, was just so we could edit the die. And this plays out perfectly right now because it means we get to actually do change the layout fundamentally. And I can actually use inheritance here, I think, but I've never done that in JavaScript, to be honest. So let's see how we do inheritance in JavaScript 6. If anybody knows offhand, you can do it. Our support for JavaScript, so is it 5 or 6? Yes, 5. It's still quite new, so I'm still not quite used to it. And I've been using the old way before, but there must be a way to do it. And let's do ES5 to get the right answer. Can I do classical inheritance? That's a good question. Let's look at MDM. MDM is usually a good source. Mozilla Developer Network. Defining classes. Oh, I just need one example. Extends. Okay. How does extends work? Extends animal. Extends speak. This looks reasonable. Let's figure out how this works. Alright. So we're going to do standard die. Extends die. That was correct, I think. Don't know why it's not going back. And we probably need a constructor still. And constructor still takes a definition, but we'll take a different one. And does anybody know if this calls the base constructor? We're going to find out, I guess. Let's hope this calls the base constructor. I have no idea. We can do this by saying console.log this.id. Let's see if it has a base. And I'm going to say this.definition equals definition. and remove it from here. And I'll just make everything be a standard die for now so we can set this up slowly a bit at a time. So now we have new standard die. This is one of the ways to refactor. If you're going to split something, just put it all into one first of all. And what did I do wrong there? This is not allowed before super. Okay. Did that make sense? I'm just guessing based on the error that I was supposed to put super here. Okay, so it still looks like it works, which is good. That's what we want. And so now we're going to create a second one called class Dark Souls die, extends die. And the Sublime doesn't want to, whatever, that's not my problem. Constructor, definition, okay, and we saw the ID written out on the screen. You can't see it over here. So confirm that super is called. I learned something about JavaScript. That's always nice. And we're going to do the same thing. This dot definition equals definition. We're going to think a bit later. The reason this isn't part of die is, we'll get to this. Maybe it is a part of die. Maybe it's not. I don't know. And we're going to split off this all dice now. So we have standard dice, var Dark Souls dice. So this is standard dice. And this is Dark Souls dice, DS black. Now these are two different types. So wait, I forgot to change it. Two different types. New Dark Souls die. Now the one thing we don't quite have from Fuse yet is that in navigation we'd be able to get at the standard name, but outside of navigation I don't have this class name yet, so I'm going to explicitly put a type and say standard. And this dot type equals Dark Souls with an underscore maybe. And I have a reference here. All dice is not defined, so where do I do all dice still? Add die, new dice equals, okay, standard dice. We're going to have to change this in a bit. I'll get there right away. Anywhere else we use all dice? Yes, we do. This dot standard dice equals standard dice. We want to convert these so that we can show them in lists. Standard, standard, standardized, and let's make a function to convert this object to list. And let's just do object. I don't know if object's a reserved word. And this is basically this code. So then we have this dot standard dice object to list standard dice, this dot Dark Souls dice object to list Dark Souls dice. Now I know this is a little bit of code editing here, a little bit much before design, but there's actually quite a bit to do. I didn't want to do this offline so we can see how this works, but it might be okay. So just say list. I don't know what I wanted to say there, so I'm just not going to say it. I was thinking about doing this all pre-OS offline, and it's a little longer than I thought, but I was hoping I could do it quickly here. And I don't think it'll take too long because we'll be back to the UX right away, okay? Just be patient for a second and I'll be back to the UX. So that's object to list, object to list. Our dice have two different types. And now in the Dark Souls dice, the names don't need to have names. They all have a color right now, which is, you know, not necessarily useful for Dark Souls dice, but let's do that first. Okay. Now, this is because we don't have a mechanism here. And it's showing the title. So now what I want to do is I want to have First off, I'm probably going to have to put this in a separate class soon because it's getting a little bit complicated. But let's do it here first anyway. We have an each item's dice, and we're going to do a match key equals type. And this means for each die we're going to put a slightly different control. And each of these controls should have the same outer wrapping. Just going to make it a little bit more complicated, but that's just too bad. Okay, so what do we want? We want for each different dice type. So we want to say, and I'm going to stop calling this dice soon when the class is, because we're going to change that name soon. So we're going to say item standard die. And UX template equals standard. And what this is doing is we're going to have two different views for this. Standard die UX template equals Dark Souls. But now I have to create those two types. The first thing I'm going to do is copy this off. Create a new file. Now it's going to duplicate for a second, but just let's deal with that for a moment. UX, change the name to a class, and this is going to be view standard die. And where is outer color? Outer color is, okay, let's just remove this for a second. I'll get back to this because I don't want to duplicate that. And so the standard die has that. We're going to have, let's create a new folder called views. Views standard die.xml. And what you'll see is this is a view as a standard die, and then we have item Dark Souls die. And this is where it's going to start complaining that there's one missing now. Right, and now it's going to start complaining. It doesn't know standard die and it doesn't know Dark Souls die. It might be the project file. I called it view standard die. Sorry, view standard die. There's still an error there because we don't have the Dark Souls ones. So I'm going to do the quick approach right for now. Save this as another file. So they're exactly the same at first. Dark Souls die. And where'd my thing go? View Dark Souls die. So we just copied and pasted the files, so we have the exact same view on them twice, and view Dark Souls die, view Dark Souls die, and I'm just going to figure out, cannot resolve type. Let's check the project file. Okay, this is the reason. Let's just do **UX is a source file. No, is a UX file. I think that's correct right now, or is it just UX? I always forget what it's called because I don't edit these files so often. **UX is a. Anybody know what this *UX file is? Let me check our references. Now sometimes it's quicker for me to check code, but I always force myself to check our references because if there's something missing from here, I make a note of it. I try and go back and add it to the doc somehow. So let's look at the project file. And what do we have? We have includes, we have a ** here somewhere. Glob pattern, *UX, **. I guess I can just do **UX. I don't have to say what type they are. So everything **.ux. According to our docs, that should work. Let's see if it does. It's fine. Auto reload failed, which means I have to go refresh it again. Let's rebuild because I changed the project file. Occasionally it doesn't pick that up. And watch it building. Now what do I have as an error? I'm sorry I can't actually make this text here bigger. It would be really nice. Data type not found. View standard die. Could not resolve type view standard die. So we're missing this file. Views, we have view standard die, UX class. Why is it not finding it? Something to do with that. Did we actually make a file wrong? Let's explicitly mark them as UX. Or do I have to do star star slash star? Okay, this is not making me happy. Whatever that was. Was outside of bounds. Interesting. I don't know what that is. Index is outside the bounds of the array past trace for stack trace. Why would that be a problem there? Okay, I'm gonna just look at my other file now, and I'm gonna check the docs, and I'm gonna put a to-do down for that. Let me make a note of this, that I had problems with this. I'm going to star slash star.ux in preview. I just made a note for myself on my very messy page, and I'm just going to go check my other project, source user, the Netrunner one, because I think we did the same thing. It was just star. We did nothing special. But did we put the UX files in different folders? No, we did not. That would be a reason why we didn't do that. So let's check out, what other file do I have? Toils and Troubles is another project I was looking at. Just star, nothing. And this one actually has files. So we did nothing. So star should have worked. So let's just remove all of that and try to figure out what the error is. Okay, now I have to figure out why I can't resolve this type. Why is it not data type not found? View standard die, and I have standard die. I have view standard die. UX class dice set is view standard die. I'm getting a bit perplexed as to why this doesn't work. So obviously I didn't want to be spending the episode on debugging this, but we're going to get there. Let's get rid of this first just in case. Data type not found, view standard, view Dark Souls. But it's definitely there, view standard die. Wow, why is it not finding this? Let's put just a test here first of all. View standard die. It'll do nothing, but it'll get past that. Data type still not found, so it's doing something weird. It's not rebuilding that. View standard die right there. So now it's just view Dark Souls die, and I'm trying to figure out why it's just not seeing those other tiles. View Dark Souls die. Of course I have to rebuild, but I shouldn't have to rebuild for this stuff. Oops, not Dark Souls die. Okay, what does rebuild say? found it, but now I have a problem that I should definitely not have to do this, because this is obviously not correct. Putting them in a different file should work just fine. I know. Sorry, I made a really stupid mistake. I'll show you in a second. It's because I was thinking a different file type. Quickly over here. Again, I don't know why Sublime never remembers my font sizes. So excuse me for a second. If you can see the small text, I'll say in a second what my problem was, and it's clearly not the tool in this case, even though I use branches. As I always say, I forgot my standard disclaimer. I'm using a bunch of branches and weird stuff, but it was working just fine this morning. But if I go to views, these are XML files, which was really stupid. XML files are not recognized by Views, obviously. Although we base their format on XML, it is a UX file, and it has to be called UX. It's a really simple mistake. I don't know if we can have the tool help me in any way. If I make a dumb mistake, it's kind of, I'm out of luck. And so we actually have the two different dice now. Now that I have the basics in place, we can change the actual viewing of them. And so for the Dark Souls die, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it so we have a different item. We have a panel. I'm just going to get rid of the stack panel. Just going to use the rectangle and put some text on top of it. Alignment equals center def name. And we're not going to put the name on it. We have a color. The color will be enough. Actually, because I don't have a proper logo, yeah, let's just put a... Because some of them are black, I don't have a good text color I can actually put on these things. I'll just do it gray then. Text color equals... Should be able to see just enough. I just do 888. Don't care what gray that is. Font size equals... Going to make it a bit bigger, and we're just going to say DS now on it. Dark Souls. That should be enough. Or we can explicitly say dark slash. And what's the line feed? Now let's just do DS. And the rectangle has a color, and if you clicked on it, it edits the die. We're going to have to move that out. It works here because of cascading, but we don't need this number of sides here, so we can completely get rid of this circle. So now if I save that, I said now if I save that, it should reload. Okay, oh, I had to click on it. That's weird. And we have a panel, and okay, it shouldn't be text alignment. We just want to put this in the center now. Okay, so now you can very clearly see this is a different die type. And that's what we're doing. The standard dies we can leave the same, but we don't have to put the text at the bottom. We're just going to write the circle side in the middle. So we have no stack panel. Let's get rid of that. And we'll put the circle not in the top right, but in the center. Save that. And we have a bit of space there now as well. And this is a bit tricky when we use match. This default will never be used now. So we don't have any spacing between them now. So what we want to do is give them all standard spacing. And you notice what I also did is I have this bit commented out in the top about the background color when it's being edited. We don't want to duplicate this much. We want to have a standard thing here for all of them. So let's create another class. That's the view base, and we'll do it this way. Panel UX class equals item base, and the margin will be 5. And hit test mode will be local bounds because we don't care what's inside of it. We want to click on the whole thing all the time. And this will be item base dot UX. We'll call it view item base because we're calling this all view item base. And we'll go inside one of these and we'll take this bit out, put it into item base, put it back in here. Okay, we'll say this dot color, and the default color is going to be just a transparent white. And we'll make Dark Souls die now a view item base, a view item base. So we have the common definition between them of view item. Save that. And also for the standard die, we also want a view item base, view item base. Get rid of the color. View item base. So now both the standard die and the Dark Souls die have the same basic view, and this is just for the background that when you click on it. Okay, I forgot to put clicked on this, sorry, clicked. And here we want clicked equals edit die. I could have left the clicked inside, but I have this preference that because I'm binding to something at this level, at this file right here, I don't want to be buried inside saying what does edit die is. I want it outside. I want the binding very clear that we're binding to a function at this level. And so now if you click on this, okay, so now I'm a bit worried that we don't have the highlighting. I'll get rid of this clicked. We're missing, the view item base is now missing the ID. And we don't know what we're editing. Change this dot color. So let's just put the ID at the top just as a quick text to debug this. Value equals ID slash editing.id. And this is editing ID or 0. And this is actually because it's a string, we have to put it, escape it. Alright, that was almost a bit silly. It's actually doing the division for me, which is not what I wanted. So we'll do the string concatenation then. 1/2, 2/2, it's editing currently 2. It says it's editing 2. Editing 1, editing 2, editing 1, editing 2, editing 1. Editing nothing. But, this while true is not triggering. So I click on here. It should show the background. Maybe I have something wrong with the background colors, so let's say, let's put some text in here, a circle in here too. Make it big and red. Okay, so this is definitely triggering. It's just changing this color doesn't seem to be working. And I have a color that should be okay. This dot color, color primary. You know why is this? Because I had padding on here before, so we can't actually see the color. There we go. So now you can see it, right? So it's because we want to get rid of the margin. We have padding instead of margin, so we can highlight these things. Okay, and so now it highlights. I have a space in here somewhere now. I don't know where it's coming from. I'll have to get back to that. Let's get rid of this text value. But this is not too tragic for now. I can figure out what his space is later. Let's just say padding a 7 instead, so you can clearly see it. And, okay, now there's no space, which means, oh, this could very well be a pixel alignment issue. I have to check that, but I can check that one later. But the point is that what I've actually done here is created 2 different dice type. They have completely different views for them. They share the same base, but they have a different view. So there's a totally different text type, a dice type. Now what we'll do is we have to create different editors for each of these. So since they're different views, each of them is going to be a different editor. And what that means is we go back to the state, because now we don't have just this one static die here. This static die no longer has a color, because color is something part of a different die. So we really have a class Dark Souls die. And let's give this one a color, because we know the Dark Souls die has a color. Super name, comma sides, this dot color equals color, and the other one just doesn't. The standard die doesn't have a color. Number of sides is still the same, number of colors are the same, and so now these are now not static dies, these are now Dark Souls die. The question here is, should this actually be called standard die, Dark Souls die? Because I'm going to have a conflict in the names here. So let's call this again static. Static. The static part is the part of the definition that doesn't change. This doesn't change. It's always the same. And this should still work. Nothing should change over here. Well, what it means is that these other dice, the standard dice, the standard static dice just have no color anymore. The color information is just not part of it. And it should be okay. Did I do the extends? Yeah. Okay. And I never did figure out this ID one. We have something referring to color still. But that's not what we have to get to. Let's figure out now how we actually edit this. For each of these has a different editing type, but they're very much the same. And we can change that now. And I'm going to just remove this modifier for a bit, just to simplify the code. And now we have this editing bit. And this is where for each die type, I want to have a different editor. We can show the standard add and remove bits. It has a name. Each one has a name always. They have a definition and a name. They have a close and remove. But this part at the bottom is now per die type, and we're going to use a match and case for this. Let's see how we do this. We're going to go and find the match instructions. There's a second match class. So we have match value case, match value case. I really don't know why we don't use UX template here. I'm going to write this down. It's like the odd one out. We can use templates for navigation, we use templates for each, but we can't use templates for the generic match, which makes it rather silly, but okay. Though you could technically abuse an each. Actually, I wonder if maybe match is not just outdated, because we have an instance class. And we do. We can do this. Instance match key equals type. Do the same thing again. The distance between an instance and each is that instance only creates one of them. And trying to think of how, yeah, the instance only creates one of them, and each creates a whole bunch. So literally we just do instance, and we can use templates again. And here we're going to do, we had views, and now we're going to have edits, and let's do edit standard die UX template equals standard, edit Dark Souls die UX template equals Dark Souls. And again, I'm just going to basically copy the definition we had over for each one and worry about editing it later. Create another one, views, and I just create one called edit. Edit. Standard die.ux. Oops. Now, did I leave the wrap panel in there? That was silly. The wrap panel should not be out there because we don't know for sure what the editing is going to be. Now, this is all going to come back to the modifier later, but we'll get back to that. UX class equals edit standard die. And this now, because this is where the error is saying it doesn't know what all dice is, because we created this new standard dice and Dark Souls dice. So let's do the standard dice. This now uses standard dice. Looks the same, and we're going to save this as Dark Souls as well. Dark Souls die. Edit Dark Souls die. Dark Souls dice. Okay. Alright, so what do we have? Did this not have an error? Now it's showing both of them. Wonderful. Why is it showing both? Match key. That was not the intent. It should not be showing both of them. Match key. Alright, because... Interesting. I didn't specify the source of this, and... which means this won't actually work. Right, because I don't say where this data is coming from. Where is this match key type coming from? I just can't do it. So we're actually going to have to end up doing the match, the width and the each. So how are we going to do this? We're going to say width data equals the one we're editing, just like we did up here. See the top of the file. And I'm sorry about it. I'm going to check this instance. I really like instance to work with a data context. That would be so much simpler than the match case we're going to do, and it would be so much more consistent. And I'm surprised we don't already have it. I almost thought we did have it. Reuse, identity, defer. And I really don't. I'd really just like to say data equals editing. So it'd be like a one-item thing. And I know internally it supports this. Absolutely internally it supports this because this is exactly how it's implemented. But we'll just have to do it the long way first. Unfortunately. So we're going to do a match. And what was match? That was key. Match value equals type case string equals standard. You can see how this is a lot more bulky than the desired approach with the templates. It's more generic and it works in other cases, but for something like this is just bulky. I don't really like this approach, but I don't have an option right now. We could actually make an array and abuse this. You can make a temporary array and use each instead, but I'll just show exactly how it works right now. Okay. Now this is what we want. So for the D6, the standard die, we have the two dice types, and the Dark Souls ones, we have the Dark Souls ones. This is what we wanted. This is important because we have two different things. The remove button still works. Close button still works. We had, sorry. Pressing add does not work apparently because I forgot to change something. Cannot read property expected value of undefined. Okay, so we have something weird here. Let's replace this one. I have to reload everything. We can add our other let's add the other dice in so we have a bit more of extension here. New static die D4, 2, 3, 4. And this no longer has a color, so we don't even have the last property. JavaScript just doesn't complain when you do that. Let's do a D10, 9, 10. Now, because we have different die types, you notice I wouldn't technically have to do these sides, but doing the sides is still a bit easier than extending it for now. D10 and D12, 11 and 12, and a D20 are the common ones. Okay. Now, when we did an add, we got the error on add, right? F add. There are no more. There's standard dice, new standard die. This is supposed to be a standard die. And this is what we'll have to change, because how do we know which die to add now? So now we see we have all these definitions now, and the values go way up if we click the higher ones. And if we add, we're adding a standard die. So we add a standard die. Now the question is, well, how do we add a Dark Souls die? So this add button is going to have to come up with a list of options. Which type of dice do we want? Which type of dice do we have? How are we going to add those dice? And now this becomes a matter of interface. What do we actually want to show here? I think I'm just going to list the names. And yeah, we'll just list the names. This dot item types, and I'm starting to move away from the name dice, and we'll show you that in a while. Item dice, but we don't have standard sets here. Maybe we should. Maybe we should. What do I want to do here? Let's just do the quick way. Let's just do an inline thing. Item is, the name is standard. What does it even mean? Well, how do we create this? Do we actually need a factory here, or do we do an actual if statements? Thinking. Really thinking about this, how to do this. There's a question, how do I want to actually do this creation? It comes down to here, this new creation. Do I actually want to do an if statement? Let's just do it. Yeah, let's just do it simply this way. Now I'm still going to do a list so the text doesn't have to be the same as the type. Particularly in this case, type Dark Souls. And we do an add die. We're now going to do an add die type. And it has args type equals args.data.type. And a switch in JavaScript, does it have a standard script switch? JavaScript switch. Switch, this is good enough to do a switch. It is, but do they have a functional switch that returns a value? No, it does not. Okay, whatever. Rewriting multiple if statements with switch, fine. That one's fine. Okay. They don't have what I'm looking for, so I'll just do it the basic way. Switch type. Case is string. Case standard. The new die equals new standard die. So this is basically our factory method now. Case Dark Souls new die equals new Dark Souls die. And what's the default Dark Souls die about DS Black? I guess those don't have to have the names. We just call them black, blue, and orange now. Okay, so where we have this black, let's create a black one, break, and yeah, okay, so we have a new die. We'll figure out what to do later if the type is undefined. This dot dice dot push new die. This dot editing equals new die. And add die really does nothing. Add die is actually probably, we don't even need JavaScript anymore because we're just going to do this strictly on the high level view. Let's do it that way. We don't even need this type anymore. Add die. But what we have to do in the UX is when somebody clicks add die, we have to bring up a little editing box. And where does this editing box come up from? It comes right underneath this dock. Comes underneath this dock panel, or it comes at the bottom. Add die panel. We just want to show the selection of the dice that we have. Well, true. And this will be a little bit of a listing, so let's just say this is a wrap panel again. Oops. Each items equals, and of course I forget what I called it. Items are item types. Item types. Text value equals name. Clicked equals add die. This one will now add a die, except I want it to do multiple things. So let's also add a clicked handler. Clicked. Set add die panel dot value equals false. So we're going to hide this as soon as we've selected something. And now add die, this thing that was adding a die beforehand, which I don't even know where I put it anymore. Where is the plus sign? It's right here. I can't find it because it has the it has this little symbol here. This no longer clicks adds die. We're going to add a click to this. Clicked set add die panel dot value equals true. So what this does when we click, it's supposed to open up this panel, and if you click something, it actually calls the actual add die, and then it goes away. There'll probably be problems here, but let's just ignore them. Alright, so it actually worked, but the layout was horribly broken. So let me deal with that. Die panel is, this is dock equals bottom, so it has its own space. And it probably should have some sort of border, some sort of colors. Color equals color primary. And where were those buttons from the other one? We had them. Let's go look at those. I'm not going to reuse them right now. I'm just going to sort of steal them. Maybe, okay, before I steal them, before I steal too much and copy and paste it, let's create a standard button type that we want. We're going to throw this in resources. Oops. Okay, something here has the wrong indentation. Probably because I copied another file. There we go. Color equals, should be white, I don't know, okay. UX class equals Well, I don't know. I always have a hard time calling this. What do I want to call this? I want to call it a standard button. A standard button, maybe. Margin padding. Let's put these right at the front, the names, so we know what it is, to match the global pattern. Now we have to give it a property. We're going to have a string UX property equals name. I just call it label. I prefer the name label. Property this.label. So we can change it in these editors. We now have a standard button, label equals name, clicked equals select die. It's going to be the same on the other one. We have edit. Where's our edits? Standard die is the same, exactly the same. We might think about reusing it, but that's okay. And now we want, in the dice set, we need the editoring as well. Where I put it right here, we're going to, oh no, what happened? Standard button, clicked equals add die. And we have a name again, but we also want to have a clicked handler. It's the same thing. Okay, so what we had is, let's close this. When we clicked add, it pops up our selection. And we're going to say a standard die this time, and then it pops up the standard die. This is what we wanted. Now we have all these different dice type. Okay. And we can remove this, and let's add a Dark Souls one now. Add a Dark Souls dice. We have orange, blue, black. So now we have what we wanted. I can add dice of different types to this, and they're all accessible through this little add button. Now I can't get rid of the add button, but that's fine. We'll deal with that one later. Remove that. And I'll worry about the design a little bit more later on that. Don't know why there's so much padding on the wrap panel, but that's okay. So we can create different items here, and this all comes around to, why did I do this? Why did I waste all my time doing this to have the exact same basic program? It's because I wanted to simplify the type so these editors are not so big. But now importantly, I can add a modifier. I can add the modifier as a new type. Before I do this, I'm going to say maybe I should rename a few things, but for now, yeah, let's just keep the names. So we have a main state, and this file is getting big too. I should probably start breaking this up, but I'll worry about that maybe offline to refactoring. So no, we don't really have a class die anymore. We just don't care about die. There's not a standard item, so we're just call it item now. And the item ID, these don't have to be dice anymore. We have no requirement for that. Extends item. Extends item. And that's fine. I'm going to get rid of this modifier completely. Modifier. Now this dice I'm going to leave for dice for now, just in case. But we need to do one more thing here. We need to now have a... Okay, I lied. Actually, no, let's just do it this way. These do still extend a die because I need another die type. I don't need one, but you'll see that it simplifies. It extends item. Constructor definition. This definition was definition. Because these are fairly common, they both define a die. And the reason why this is because I very quickly saw down here this expected value. These should define an expected value. Expected value. Because I'm adding it. And this returns this .definition.expected value. Because they're the same, we're going to reuse the code. This can just become d.expectedValue to simplify. We don't get any errors. Very good. Okay. And now we can do this one, modifier item. Extends item. It's not a die. We got an error over there. It's fine. Constructor. Super. This dot modifier equals 0. Now get expected value. The expected value of a modifier is very simple. It's just the modifier itself. This dot modifier. Good. We have this dot modifier, and I just got some errors over here. This is not allowed to use before super. I don't think I did that. Right here. Super. Should be fine. Just refresh. Now we just have to add it to the list of things to add. Let's go down there and do that. We have one more type of item now. We have a modifier type, and let's call this modifier. And in case we have a modifier, we have to do modifier. This is our factory class again. We'll just leave it as new die for now. New modifier item. It has no default. I don't know why I put semicolons in those. I never put semicolons if I don't have to. Okay, so now what we have is we should have a modifier in here. And we click it and there's nothing there. And why is that? Because we haven't done a view for it. We actually need to create a modifier view. I don't know why it doesn't have a name. I'll worry about that in a second. Let's create a view for it. And this edit die is really, yeah, it's no longer a die, but it's okay. View modifier item UX template equals modifier clicked equals edit die. These are just all dies right now. We're also going to create a view. Maybe I should create the view first. So the view is also here, case string equals modifier. Actually, that was the view. Never mind. Edits modifier. This is the should be modifier item. Edit modifier item. And we have to create the view for this now. What is the view for modifier? Let's just create a quick one here. Panel. Oh, what did we say the base class was? Not that one. This one. Get rid of these. View item base. View modifier item. And we know this is a class. This is it gets the modifier item context. So let's save this. So we have view modifier. This is in views. Text value equals modifier. Nothing special. What is it complaining about? Could not resolve type. View modifier item. Edit modifier item. I think I have to create the edit modifier item. So the other edits, did they inherit from a common class? No, they did not. So we'll just create another one. Oops. Panel UX class equals edit modifier item. I really wonder how is it knowing it wants to put them in these classes, whatever. Modifier item dot UX. Edit, yeah. And this just has a text input value equals modifier. Okay. Something didn't work. Editing, come on. It has to work. What did I screw up in the JS? We forgot to say type. This is probably something I should pass to the basic class instead, because it's required. Now if you have a modifier, now we actually have a modifier and it's no formatting with the 0 and 0. In theory, if I edit this, oh come on, cannot multiply. Why did it do that? Is this coming from the JavaScript or what? Where is it trying to multiply this? It shouldn't be trying to multiply this at all. I got an error because it's... I don't like this. I had this problem before. It's because it's the wrong type. But there's nothing that should be multiplying this. Now this is something I actually fixed a lot of on the main branch, and it's just been checked in recently, so it might actually be fixed now. To get around this, to do this should work as a text input. Instead we'll do a slider. Minimum equals -10, maximum equals 10, value equals modifier. Then for sure we have a float the whole time. Let's reload this. Alright, it really wants to rebuild this. Come on, let it load. Well, let's hope this works. Let's see. Modifier, and it's a slider. Okay, so that works. So I have a conversion error somewhere. And so it goes from -10 to 10. Perfect. Let's put a user step in here. It's 1. You know what? I bet the default slider doesn't support user step. I'm going to make that note as well. It would in native mode, like the native controls support it, because I know I tested that. And our custom controls support it, but actually this makes no sense because the custom controls should support it. Let's refresh it. Maybe there's something wrong. There we go. It just wasn't. Didn't refresh it. That's annoying. So this user step avoids the problem of the float conversion. And as expected, this increases the expected value of 1. So now what we've successfully done is we have different editing types for these 3 types. We should put a plus. The view or the modifier item should have a little plus in the front now. And let's just make this a small... How do we do this? We can do it this way. Equals if the modifier is less than 0, then show a minus sign. Actually, since it's always going to show a minus sign, we can probably just do this, because if it's greater than 0, show a plus sign, otherwise show nothing. And just concatenate that with the modifier, because I know the standard modifying, the negatives won't necessarily, the negatives will show up, but the positives won't. And we just want our modifiers to always show up. Font size equals 20, alignment equals center. plus I think I broke our string formatting. Wow, interesting. That's a nice defect. To do, no space in between. Cause parsing error. Jake will be happy to hear that one because that goes in Jake domain then. Okay, so now we have that. We have the plus 8, and we have modifiers. Now I can show you the purpose of this one is we actually had this in the game come up. We want a, let's remove this one first. We're going to add another Dark Souls die, a black one, and we wanted a modifier, and in the game we had a 1. And I was trying to argue that this is probably better than like an orange die. I was trying to argue that the pluses are worth a lot. Okay. Okay, but apparently not enough. Oh no, we had a blue die for sure. So black and a blue die, a +1 is just 2 black dice plus 1 is better. If this was a blue die, it's ever so slightly. Oh, I had a color not change. I gotta look that one up too. Now, this expected value is hiding something. And this is very important for the stats of the game. Let me think how to explain this. I'll just play with my little spiky yoga balls as I think. I like doing that for some reason. And because our expected value doesn't show a variance. This +1 has the advantage that it'll never go below 1. That's the minimum is 1. Whereas these ones down here, you could get a 0 on the blue die, I believe. You can get like a 0. And it's not showing that, but if you're fighting a boss in the game, and the bosses have lots of health points, you still want to go with the one with the higher expected value. And the small minions, you probably want to go for the ones with the pluses, but that's not so relevant. It just indicates we might have to have a different stats mode to this game. Okay. Well, what I did here now is I have these modes. I have these 3 items we can edit, and we can edit all sorts of items now. We have this last item, and we can add new modifiers. And there's something going very wrong here. This is something with the update I have to check. This will go after Sebastian probably, this updating issue that it's not updating on some state changes. It's just not picking it up. We can even add more modifiers. That's really weird. Something really weird going on there. So you can have +5. Doesn't change the value. I don't know why you want. You might have multiple modifiers. You might have a -1 and then a +2 as well. This actually does happen. Maybe not in this game, but in other games it does. And I mean, obviously the person playing the game is going to realize if you just type a 0 or if you just type a +1. But since we have these multiple items now, it's no challenge for us to just add these to it. Now this isn't showing the type of die it has. So there's one last thing we have to show, the title of it. And I don't know why we don't have a title. This title for the types. Name. They're supposed to have a name. And where does it show it in a dice set? Where do we show this name in the editors? With editing, we don't want definition.name, we really just want name. We're just going to make it blank first of all. Now I have to add a name to all of them. So the dies, the name all comes from the definition of. So here we can say return this .definition.name. But for the modifier item, we have to have a name. Return modifier. And yeah. Okay. Black D6. So this using maybe the name wasn't so good. maybe this should actually be, so now we have a modifier, at least the modifier has a name now. To show this extension here, this dot type names, we might want to have, yeah, okay, we could extend the Dark Souls, let's say Dark Souls type, and Dark Souls die, and the standard die. We're not going to return the definition names because now we really want to know the type we're dealing with. We don't want that individual definition. We'll show the outer type of it. We have a Dark Souls die, we have a standard die, and we have a modifier. It's good. What we're missing now is a way to create new dice and to remove the entire dice set. And I think I've gone long enough now for though. And it's really not hard to add a new dice set here. We don't have to, it's not going to be a lot more work. And what we'll also have to do is serialization. So when you reload the app, this comes back. But this covers our basic feature set. This is like everything we really wanted. There's some issues, as you can see, with updating. I'll follow up on those. But we have our submenus. Again, let's go over what we actually did this time. In our dice comparator, I really wanted to add this modifier. This is this little +6 here. But the UI was making it a bit difficult and a bit complicated. So instead what I did is I created item types. In our file, these are stored in the dice variable, which is now incorrectly named. It should be called items now, but I won't change that quite yet. And in main, when we're viewing a dice set, this is for each set, each one of these rows is a set. On each item we switch the type, and each one of these has a template for viewing it. And this is a really nice view model. It says, okay, for this type use this page, this type use this page, this type use this page. So our view doesn't get too concerned now about how it renders it. It just shows an item and doesn't care so much. And then for the editing we had the same setup. Editing we had this with data setup. And we have to use this match case, and this is something I'm going to look into, and I'll make the to-do again. Use instance with data context. Because internally this is going to be a very trivial change to make it work exactly like each, so I can use UX template. Because a UX template is going to be a much nicer solution than match case. It'll be the exact same structures up here. It'll simply be instance, data equals dice, or with equals dice possibly, and then this exact same bit here. And to edit a file, we made a little pop-up. So when you're adding a new die type, you can select which type, not die, but any item, and then it goes into the editor for that item. And that plus was done right here. This is the little plus, and we're using Font Awesome again here to show it. And when we set it true, all we're doing is toggling the appearance of the panel down here, and when we select one of those, it calls the add die function. Now, I think that's it for now. I'm going to check in the progress into GitHub as always, so you can take a look around with it. This might work with the Vue.js preview. I don't think I've used any features that aren't supported there. If there is, then the next preview should be out soon. We've merged all these branches, so I can actually stop using the merges. The merge happened just a few minutes before I went live, though, so I wasn't going to risk using it. Simply because you just never know for sure on the merges. I had something working, just go with it. But for Wednesday, I should be using the standard again. And so you can be able to run it with the preview. If not, a new preview will be coming out soon. A preview build, I mean. And what I still have to add is adding a new item. That's a rather trivial bit. What's probably more important at this point than adding a new item is adding serialization, because we don't need to add new items until you can actually serialize this. And I've done serialization on a few of the projects I had before, and I don't know what the best practice is anymore. So I'm going to look up that first. And also, I'll do it offline, is I'm probably going to refactor this main file into multiple files. So we have the items, the static items, the main, all in separate items, separate files, because this is getting a little bit large to show. It's not too big, it still works, but I just like splitting it up for consistency. And I think that's my show for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope you can see how I do some of these things. If you weren't catching this live, just shout me out questions on Twitter, or you can log into the Fuse Slack channel and send me a message in one of the channels there, and I can get back to you, and I can also cover it in the next show. Please subscribe to my channel on Twitch so you can be informed of when the shows come out, and you can also subscribe to me or follow me on Twitter, and you can also send me questions on Twitter or what you'd like there. And otherwise, that's it for my show. I thank you for watching, and we'll continue with this again another time. Thank you.